Hello BookTube. Welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and this is going to be my wrap-up for RYBSAT Round 9. RYBSAT stands for Read Your Bookshelf-a-thon, and the idea is to pick a spot on your bookshelf and read across until the readathon is over. I have participated in RYBSAT once before, and I was really happy with the success I had, so I was very excited to participate again, but when the dates were announced, I realized that that was right at the end of our Library Bingo Challenge. Now, I'm going to do a whole separate video about the Library Bingo Challenge, which is now over as well, but I didn't have any other choice but to just pick the books in my staging area and use those for my RYBSAT TBR. And since the Library Bingo Challenge was a very high priority in my life, I had to end up breaking a couple of the RYBSAT rules. I did read the first 3 books that I showed you, and then I ended up having to substitute a different book because it was a little bit shorter, and I knew that I realistically was not going to get all of those books read during RYBSAT, and I was able to switch around a few things on my Library Bingo card and make it all work. But I really enjoyed the RYBSAT sprints that were hosted by Miranda and all of her other RYBSAT hosts. By the way, RYBSAT is created by Miranda at Books 101, and I will of course link her channel down below. She has a lot of wonderful hosts, and they do some really great and fun sprints on Twitter, and I also made a lot of new friends on Twitter this time around, so it was a lot of fun. So these are the books that were on my staging area shelf when I made my RYBSAT TBR. I did end up reading the first 3 here on the left, and then I substituted in a different book that I did not show you in my TBR, and the rest of these books I am bumping to my September TBR. So here's what I ended up reading for RYBSAT, and these were all books that, of course, fit and filled the last 4 spots in my Library Bingo Challenge. Going into this, I thought I still needed to fill 5 or 6 slots in the Library Bingo, but I realized that there were a couple of books that I had listened to on audio earlier that I hadn't counted for anything. So I was able to fit those in, which made it possible for me to read only 4 more books and finish the Library Bingo Challenge. But like I said, that's a whole other video. Let me show you what I read during RYBSAT. I listened to Jane Eyre on audio. I also followed along and read a good bit of it in print. It was a little wordy for me and a little hard for me to get through because it's so dense and it's such a long book. But I did enjoy it overall. I really liked the character of Jane. I thought she was very strong, and you have to be in order to be able to survive what she survived in her young life. And I liked that she stood by her convictions, and it was a really good book. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that this is their favorite book of all time. I wouldn't go that far. I did really enjoy it, and I'm glad that I read it. Now, I had already started this when RYBSAT started, and because it's so dense and was taking me a long time, and I wasn't always motivated to read very much of it in a day, I didn't really finish this until well into the week. But I was reading a couple of my other books at the same time, so again, I didn't follow the RYBSAT rule exactly, like to start with one book and then go to the next one, but I'm happy that I got it read. This is The Red Pyramid by Riordan. This is book 1 in the Kane Chronicles. Actually, I had already listened to this completely on audio last year, but I realized that I had missed a lot in the audio. This book is really fast-paced. A lot of different characters are coming in and out, and I would be listening to it on audio and think, wait a minute, you know, where did that character come from, and how did they get, you know, they change locations very frequently, and it's all done magically, so it's, you know, instantaneous, and I just didn't catch all the transitions. So I knew that I needed to read it in print before continuing on with the series, and I recently found this really nice hardback copy, so I even traded in my new paperback copy at the used bookstore because I wanted to have a nice hardback, and I really did enjoy reading it. Now, for RYBSAT and Library Bingo, I actually listened to it again on audio because there was a lot of time during the week when I couldn't sit down with a book, and so I listened to it again, so it was kind of fresh in my mind. Then as I went back and read the book, I was able to really absorb it and see the parts that I missed. I didn't finish rereading the print book until a few days after RYBSAT ended, but I did finish the audio book the morning after RYBSAT ended, so I was able to legitimately count this as a finished book for the Library Bingo Challenge. So now I've really read this 3 times, twice on audio and once in print. So I'm good to go on this one now, and I can go on to the next book in this series. It's really good. It is about Carter and Sadie Kane, who are, you know, I think 12 and 14, and they discover through a series of events that they are descended from the ancient Egyptian pharaohs. And this book is a fantasy. It's all about Egyptian mythology. Nobody writes mythology like Riordan. He really does a great job with this type of book. I've read all of his other series. I think I've read just about everything he's written except for this series. So I have been really wanting to read it, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. Then another book I was excited to finally read is the only book by Fannie Flagg that I had not read, and she is my absolute favorite author of standalone books. This one I would not rank near the top of the list. Now, I will clarify by saying I love all of her books, and I love this one. This was great. But I haven't found another one of her books that tops A Redbird Christmas or Can't Wait to Get to Heaven. Those are my top two. But this one was a lot of fun. It's really two stories in one book. It's the story of Evelyn Couch. In the mid-1980s, she is a middle-aged woman about my age. She's in her early 50s, and she's going through kind of a menopausal midlife crisis. Now, I should relate to her a little bit better, but I didn't. I guess because my children are still teens and hers were already gone. You know, she's kind of going through that empty nest thing, and so I haven't experienced that yet. I wasn't able to relate to her character as much as I felt like I should have, because we just come from different backgrounds and our motivations for doing things and feeling things are different. So I didn't have a lot of sympathy for her. I really kind of thought in the beginning especially she was kind of pathetic, and I had a hard time sympathizing with her. I've seen this movie several times, and I would have to say that I enjoyed Kathy Bates' portrayal of Evelyn Couch much better than I enjoyed reading Evelyn Couch in the book. I think Kathy Bates did a wonderful interpretation of that character, and I really like Evelyn better in the movie than in the book. The story is Evelyn visits the nursing home every Sunday with her husband because her mother-in-law is a resident of the nursing home, and her and her mother-in-law don't really get along all that well, and so she just lets her husband spend time with his mother, and she waits elsewhere in the nursing home. Well, she becomes friends with an elderly woman named Mrs. Threadgood. Mrs. Threadgood starts telling her about basically her life story and the stories about her family. And that's the other portion of the book then, are the stories about the Threadgoods, and especially Iggy Threadgood, who is a tomboyish girl, and it follows her life and her relationship with Ruth Jameson and all of the things that happen. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on. Now, I didn't realize, and it probably sounds kind of naive of me, but from just watching the movie, it wasn't to me real clear for certain that Iggy and Ruth were in a romantic relationship. I mean, it did give you a lot of clues, and I suspected it, but I wasn't absolutely certain, and it doesn't really ever tell you, because Ruth does get married. She has a baby. She leaves her husband because he's a wife beater, and she comes back, and then her and Iggy start the Whistle Stop Cafe. And of course then the story goes on to tell about all the different things that happen in and around the Whistle Stop Cafe. But the way it's told is so matter of fact, and Iggy's parents are so supportive and accepting that you almost are like, wait a minute, what? And I don't go looking for LGBT books, but if you do look for books with LGBT characters, then you should definitely check this out, because I think you would enjoy it. Now, their story is set in like the 20s and 30s, and I don't know if in reality in the South you could have had a lesbian couple living together and have it be accepted that widely in a small town community like that. Maybe you could. I don't know. I wasn't alive in the 20s, so I don't know. And there's a lot of other themes going on in this book too. Fannie Flagg does a great job of writing about racial tension in historical fiction. This book is set in the 20s through the 80s, and she just really has some very strong African American characters that I love reading about. So this is just a really good book on so many levels, and I recommend that you pick it up. And now I also found out that I'm not out of Fannie Flagg books. She's got a new book coming out November 1st. So for the Library Bingo Challenge, I had to reread a favorite book. I had picked out a couple, but they were both over 400 pages, and Miss Julia is definitely one of my favorite series of all times. So I decided to pick up the first one, which is Miss Julia Speaks Her Mind. Of course, this is, like I said, this is a reread. This whole series is just wonderful. I definitely recommend picking it up. And now that I'm back in the Miss Julia mood, I plan to jump now to the first book in the series that I have not read, and I'll let you know more about that in my September TBR. For some reason, my camera cut off before I was done, and here are the 4 books that I read for RYBSAT. Coming up soon, I'll have a video showing you what I'm reading for the rest of the month of September. Meanwhile, have a great day, read a good book, and God bless you.